ready to go.
Rise and shine, sleepyhead. It's a brand new day.
Just sit right back and you'll hear a tale.
Science! Now prepare to experience the most outrageous man on radio.
It's an excursion into the odd and into the very, very different.
Good morning.
This is insane.
Quality, quantity, and variety.
ROCKFLUX.
Let's get this show on the road.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's 4:16 a.m. in the middle of nowhere on a Saturday, the 23rd of April, calendar year 2022, the future for some of us. I just realized that, I went through and I put this sound clip in this morning. I don't know. It's kind of low volume because I had to go through a process. I don't know if I could even. I have it maxed in the. Yeah, it's pretty much maxed out. There's nothing I could do about that. Anyway, I don't know. I woke up thinking about that. What's it all about? I was like, my cat was next to me purring. This frail thing. And, it just makes you think about life and our existence and what it's all about. I know that's heavy for people. But boy, look at Sienna Miller. She's from the remake of that movie. Jude Law was in that. She's got to be one of the most beautiful faces in, today. On the silver screen. Look at me next to her. Boy, does my face look like a jaded, faded thing. Tired. 4:15. Yeah, I woke up at 2 something or other. But, I slept long enough. I mean, there's only so much time you could spend in bed. So, you just get up, splash some water in your face, and start all over again. But it's a Saturday, flow of consciousness. And I thought we'd use this as a departure point. But I guess before we get into that, let's just do this weekend thing.
Weekend weather.
Just out of my own curiosity for myself, if not for anyone else. It's currently 55 degrees outside of the studio, and it's supposed to rain basically during the entire duration of the show, which means after the show I'm going to have to go upstairs and empty buckets. 80% chance of rain in these parts because of the Appalachian Mountain Range kind of runs through this area. It seems that the clouds get trapped here, and we always get more snow, more rain, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, oddly enough, almost during the entire duration of the show, it's showing rain, not showers, rain. The high today is going to be 73 degrees, the low 55. Tomorrow, sunny, 79, and the low 57. Now, here's the part that's really annoying. Tuesday, rain, 55, low 36. Wednesday, high of 43 and low of 28. Of course, I planted some stuff. Now, what I did plant were winter or cool weather crops. In other words, I have my kale out there. I did realize I had about 5 seedlings of chard, but I have a plastic cover that'll should protect them from the frost. And they're a cool weather crop anyway. I'm hoping my lettuce seeds break through, but they're covered with burlap. And I have some radishes out there, which I'm going to add. So I didn't do it yesterday, and I should have, but I'll do it today if there's a break in the rain. I'll add some more radish seeds to this area. And I noticed that I have some little, what they call volunteer kale seedlings coming up. And I may yank 1 or 2 of those out of the ground. Of course, I'm out of soil, so I probably won't yank them out of the ground today. I'll just let the rain get on them and let them get bigger. But yeah, we're going to go from close to 80 degrees, on basically 80 degrees Sunday and Monday daytimes to 28-degree low on Wednesday night. 50-degree difference. Right? Yeah. Anyway, that's your
Weekend weather.
with a little glimpse at the beginning of next week. I rather just look at Sienna Miller. Sorry. Don't want to mispronounce your name, my dear. I know you're not watching this show, but that's okay. Anyway, in case you are.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
The coffee's extremely hot today. I'm still drinking the Cafe Bustelo or whatever it is. Bustelo. So, yeah, what's it all about? And yeah, pardon if my face looks like contorted and, it's like, yeah, I'm not really. It'll be the usual thing. Give me 20 minutes till I wake up. I can tell you while we were waiting for that, I washed the legendary white handkerchief yesterday again. As always, we always have clean things here. I worked out in the yard yesterday for almost about 3 hours, shoring up, against the rodent, only to find it going back to my compost pile, which, as some may say, oh, well, you got compost in there, but it's not really a compost pile. The only thing that's really in there are clippings of branches and things like that from my yard, because I have a lot of like little trees, growing and grapevines, the vine part. And so I put them in there so that they basically just keep shrinking down as opposed to burning them or doing anything weird with it. So it's not like it's a food source, but it's a good hiding place. And I saw the rat went in there. Now, whether or not it was using that as a path to get back over to the neighbor's yard or not, I didn't see it exit there. And so I happened to buy several days ago some ammonia, like a half gallon of ammonia, because it's the very back of my yard. I don't have to worry about it. It's not like I'm trying to poison the thing or do anything inhumane. It's just that, so I've been told, and then again, I've only been told. I don't know this to be true. But the sensitivity of the rodent knows that strong scented things, particularly something like ammonia, which they use actually to wake you up if you pass out, will drive them away because the scent is just too overwhelming for their sensitive noses. So I pretty much doused that area fairly well with that, and we'll see. But, it's going to rain this morning. So that'll all just get washed away. There's no winning. So I don't know. I'm still in it. I'm still in somewhat of a quandary now. It seems the intelligence of this rodent is proving to be quite the challenge. This is like a cartoon, a Roadrunner cartoon or something, or Tom and Jerry, or something ridiculous like that. I mean, it's getting pretty crazy. Um, so I don't know how to deal with this thing. Yeah. Let's see if I have this thing just just because we talked about it. This would be very hard to find with Apple search, but it's possible. Bear with me. The show has not officially begun yet. Any minute now. Wait a second. Okay. I almost had it. Almost had something close to it. Still looking. What happens is it goes through every freaking file that you have, and it's just it's ridiculous. So let's see. I think I have this thing somewhere. It's not there though. I could have sworn. I'm going to look just for a little bit longer if you'll bear with me, please. I may have separated it. No. So weird. I had added some things, I called them additions, to the show. And apparently they're not there. Let's see if it's something in this area. Web stuff. No. Let me try one last thing and then I'll stop. Let's see. Are these all exactly the same thing now? This is a different VU meter. I wonder what that would look like. The problem is I put some of these things up and I don't know where they go. Like as if they're, you know, not there. So much for that. All right, we're going to try a little bit, a little more. What's it all about? Just enjoy this for the time being. Plural. When I find it, it'll be worth it. Put it that way. You know? if Apple computers weren't such goofy looking things, if they worked better, I'm just curious. I think this program doesn't really work with GIF or GIF files, however you pronounce them. There's somebody saying, actually, I think it's this Fran Blanche came out and said, we're into the show now. Okay. Sorry about that interlude.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
Fran Blanche, if you know who she is, came out with a thing saying that it's neither a GIF or a GIF file. It's a GIF, graphic interface file or some format or something like that. I always called them GIFs because it was a hard G in my mind, in that configuration, put it that way. But if you want to call them GIFs, .gif, that's fine. But I disagree with her, though, because usually for a suffix, we don't say .com instead of .com. Do you see what I mean? So it is a matter of, and I would say the proper word would be GIF, because you wouldn't, it's a hard G. The only way a G is soft is if it's if it's not leading the leading word. In other words, gaff, God, GIF, right? Whatever. You have to have some kind of like flow of consonants, certain vowels to follow the consonant that make it that way, right? Anyway, but we'll leave that up. So yeah, let's get into that. So low. There was a time when you had tools on Apple computers. See, they're so much into this idea of selling you something. It's funny how like a lot of the songs on even Apple Music went from 99 cents to $1.29 over the past couple of years. That's like talk about inflation, 30-cent increase. Which is a lot of money. If you think about it, buying individual songs. I've purchased a lot of songs over the years. Who knows? And then I had a computer crash once, and there was some weird thing when Apple was changing iTunes or something like that. And so between a crash and then this weird thing that went on with Apple's, where Apple was trying to purge people who had who didn't buy music from Apple from their iTunes. They never admitted it, and I don't know if there was ever a class action suit or anything done about that. But I had lost all this music that was mine. It wasn't like it was Napster stuff, or something like that. Because I was a DJ for, forever. And so I had acquired many songs, and I had gone through the process of literally, plugging in whatever, everything from a turntable to a CD to a, cassette player, and encoding these songs, putting them into the computer, digitizing them. And I lost like 1,000 songs one time. It was like that purge on Twitter I talked about yesterday. Like, suddenly this stuff vanished. I got on customer support with them because I think I'd currently just had bought this is when I had bought recently had bought a computer. And to no avail. And then I had another time I had dropped my original password. See, I've been on the internet for so long that the company, I had an email from back in the mid 90s, mid to even a little bit prior to the mid 90s, early 90s, you could say. Not early 90s, somewhere between, I don't know, anyway, mid 90s. And I had that email for, I don't know, 15 years or something like that. I don't know. I was one of the original people on it. And, in fact, when I wanted to get rid of it, they said, like, you're like one of the founders, kind of like the guy looked at my email and saw that I was like one of the first dozen people to have email with that company, right? The guy couldn't believe it. And they said, well, you can keep that email for just $5 a month, right? And I said, all right. And I kept it for another couple of years. And then finally I just said, there's just too much spam. It's so old that thing is in, that email has like circulated in about every spam, list out there. And I'm just tired of, all the garbage, and the spam filters just don't work. I mean, they partially work, but they're not, Anyway, I happen to have used that email over the years to have purchased certain iTunes songs, certain songs from Apple. And since I no longer had that email, it was prompting me for the email and password, which I knew the email and password for the song in order to. But I guess because the email wasn't active, there was no way for me to do like a second verification or something like that. And I called customer service, explained the situation, and said there are multiple ways of doing this, but they wouldn't have it. And I have no idea what I lost because, see, I had a lot of music I lost in a building because it's a long story, but it was rented out to somebody who was, literally let the place get like destroyed, And then other music I may have given away, I may have digitized it and then sold off the CDs, given the stuff away to people because I had digital copies of it, whatever. And it happened to be at a time when I think I just got this G5 that I'm using now. And I still had not, it was so brand new and so fresh that even though I had backup drives, I just hadn't gotten around to backing up my iTunes at that point. I mean, it was so fresh and clean and new, which is a little word to the advise. Of course, now with SSD drives, I don't think you have that crash problem. I'm not 100% sure about that. But anyway, my foot's caught in something. So I still could almost smell that ammonia in my nose. And I didn't recall smelling it when I was pouring it out. The stuff I was trying to get rid of the rodent for. Well, anyway, I lost it. I lost a lot of music, and I don't know what it is. And sometimes I lay back in bed because I have one of these Amazon Echo Dot voice assistants. And in fact, this morning I asked it to play Alfie, right? But there's times when I just sit there and I'm thinking, I want to hear some music or hear an album because I had a great album collection. I have none. I have no albums now. I had a fantastic selection of albums. I don't have a single album. And I'm starting, and nothing comes to mind. And I do have this book, like 1,000 album covers, which I was using for a while, but it was based on the artistic, side of album art, as opposed to So I mean, there's a lot of albums in there that I liked that had great covers. It was one of the beautiful things about albums is that you had this piece of art as well. But they were more into that than just, sometimes some of the best albums you had crappy, a crappy cover, you know. So I find myself, it's difficult to just, draw out of the, tens of thousands of albums and just think of an album. It's like, it's weird. But let's go back to topic. So I have what's it all about, and I keep being drawn back to that age-old question. And yeah, and I know this show, yeah, because a lot of people, I have two categories on this show, and these shows are listed under, live and under philosophy. I don't know if anybody's ever grasped that idea that this show does deal with philosophy. And I guess today more so we'll focus on that kind of ideas, on the ideas of deep thought. All these questions about life that through the ages people have tried to answer or just been puzzled over or just have written about, well, I mean, it's not so much even the answer. Sometimes it's just questioning them in long form, trying to make some sense of it all, right? Or the commonality of, puzzlement that we have about everything, that has to do with ourselves, and I'm not going to get into politics, socioeconomic, geopolitics, any of that nonsense, or any of the things that I've talked about, fairly recently, the absurdities of, things that are going on topically, I mean, there's a lot of madness in this world. I mean, that's part of it. Why is there that? I mean, there was a movie out not a while back, I don't know, maybe even almost 20 years ago, less than that. Why do we fight? Or something like that. But, those are the kinds of questions, why, we have these brains, this consciousness I talk about in my book, the hard problem of consciousness. And whether or not you believe consciousness rises out of your bioelectric brain or whether you believe it's a separate thing and you have a soul consciousness and stuff. I'm not going to get into that right now. All right. It's like many times. It's like when I talk about things that seem to be political in nature. It's like, no, I'm not. I don't care what side or what the, that I don't want to get into that kind of stuff. That stuff is no longer appeals to me because like I say, I liken it to team sports. People that argue over ideology or something like that. I'm not here to argue with you. I'm not here to like disprove or poke holes through your belief system. Do you understand? That's not I'm questioning. This is just a philosophical discussion. And, so we have these brains or minds, whichever you want, the way you want to, describe it. And we think of these things. See, it would be different if we didn't think about it. If we just lived, there's a line on the chat that says, another line in that Hal David line. It was Bacharach David that wrote most of those songs. Like I was talking about Dionne Warwick, I mean, this is another Hal David line.
This is insane.
That's Dionne Warwick too. I mean, she sang a lot of their songs, and I just think I've mentioned this once before in the past, and I even dealt with this topic, in a different vein, previously, but it bears being revisited, and I know this is going to go in a total different direction. But that how underrated among people or in posterity Burt Bacharach and Hal David are. There are those. In other words, if you don't know Bacharach David as the songwriting team, the music and words respectively, you're missing out on something. And even though it's a different style of music, because it flashes way back, we're talking 40, 50 years, that you don't really know, and it's kind of like part of it, goes hand in hand with the way society is today and how people, not so much even revisionism, but it's the idea of just not knowing where we came from, knowing our own, modern history. Forget about ancient history or history that goes back hundreds, 50, 100, 200, 400, 500, whatever, further. But it's like where we came since, say the 50 onward instead of 50 backwards, And, it's, those guys really nailed it. Another line from that Alfie song, because it's kind of it's a melancholy love story. And it's out, without true love, we just exist, is a line. And I put that in the chat. And, and this is not, that's just one aspect of it, but it's the idea that those of us who think, like, you ever hear people, they refer to somebody as a thinker, right? As a sculptor, the thinker, right? At Columbia, I was, I worked at Columbia University, but there are other people that just they're not considered thinkers. Not that they don't think. We all have thoughts. You got a brain. You think with your brain, and like I say, you're conscious. But you also think. And however that works, we're not going to get into in today's show. But having that ability to think, and those of us who have deep thoughts, those of us who examine, analyze, and outside of the scientific, realm, though that's part of it as well, people driven to solve problems, right? I mean, they are definitely deep thinkers. But what I want to talk about today is life, is those of us who think about life, and we all do from time to time. Most people don't really think about life, their life, and life in general and existence, unless they're confronted with some sort of situation that forces them to. An illness, a relationship breakup, a crisis of, of some sort, some kind of life crisis, maybe some existential threat to them or their family or something weird like that. Or, perhaps just being exposed to things like, and I'm not going to expound on this, but like what I criticize all the time, social media and mainstream media, people that are trying to they're trying to bore a hole somehow into your brain, right? That's literally what they're trying to do. They want to bore a hole into your brain, and it's like that Elon Musk thing, and actually put something there. I mean, I'm using that, not metaphorically, not where as opposed Musk wants to do it, physically. But you know what I mean. The idea of people trying to just jackhammer, as I've been using the word lately, just ideas or ideology into you, trying to change you, right? And so these are times, and when you hear something from the first time, maybe watching this show is even something that will make you, well, I hope will make you think. And so when we reach that point, when we're confronted with a situation where, we're using our brains to contemplate something, to think about something on a higher level. It may be also just an appreciation of beauty, like I say, sitting and watching a sunrise, or sitting on a rock overlooking a valley, or a waterfall, any whatever you find in nature that's beautiful, right? Maybe the moment after you've just, made love or something. That moment, just thinking, and like I say, but we have that ability is what the point is. That's the first thing to consider in this discussion, is that as far as we know, we're the only creature that contemplates our life, our existence. There may be others, we don't know for sure. I don't know what's going on in the mind of my cat. It was a traumatic thing yesterday. I gave him the steroid, and it did help him, like kind of snapped him out of his thing. And he ate a little bit, drank a little bit, ate a little bit, used the litter box, but I think it's like basically wearing off. And I put a little buffet upstairs next to his water bowl, like some baby food, some canned cat food, and like a liquid, like kind of, one of these treat, they call them food toppers or something. Plus, he has the hard food that he got from the vet, which he refuses to eat. Right? Like as if the veterinarian's supposed to know. But anyway, he spent time with me this morning before I woke up. He was next to me, and he was purring for a long time. So I think he has at least had a day where he felt better. I don't know if he's going to survive or not, And I guess that's a thing that's like what's moved me to go to this topic, because that's like the big one, death, mortality, the idea that we contemplate our mortality. Now, we know that there are other animals that grieve because we could witness that. I've witnessed that before. I've witnessed a pigeon grieve for the loss of its partner, They mate for life, right? Crows, they say, whoever they are, literally have like funerals. They get together and like seem to have like a gather and mourn their dead, which almost may be why we wear black and gather at our funerals. You ever think about that? It's a very weird thing. But when a crow dies, they call it a murder of crows. Not that the crow was murdered, but a group of crows is referred to as a murder of crows. And they gather, and it's almost ceremonial. And their crows are basically black. They're not truly black. If you look closely at a crow, there's like this bluish thing behind them and stuff. Like I say, I have a bird feeder. It's crow season in my yard. The crows will become an annoyance for the next 30 days or so. But I've come to accept that. So, But anyway, isn't that an interesting thing? You may not have, no one's ever might have said that to you before. That our funerals, we wear black, and that's what crows do. And I'm sure there are many other mammals, that mourn their dead. But I don't think they contemplate their own mortality, though, the way we do. And question it. And then look at life, beyond that concept to say, what's it all about? In Hal David, the lyricist of the Alfie song, goes on to say, I just lost the lyric in my mind. Is it just for the moment that we live? That's the line. It's a great lyrics to that song. Great lyrics. If you look back over my videos, you'll find that I dealt with this topic before, and I believe I read the lyrics. Sometimes I will do that. I'm not going to do that again. And if I didn't, just look up the lyrics yourself and read them. It's a good poem, I guess. Thought provoking. So, there's no answer to these questions. This is the unknowable. There are so many unknowables in our existence, which just seems like, just doesn't seem right. Like it seems like there's, I think I said yesterday, it was semi-jokingly when I was, or the day before, one of them, where I was talking about John Lennon on the back of one of his albums used to had some quotes, and the quotes were by a Dr. Winston O'Boogie. And it just was him. And it was like, your teeth are clean, but your mind is capped. I said that in a recent show. It could have been yesterday or the day before. And pardon me with the handkerchief. I drink coffee, my nose. It's a live show. There's no way of editing it. I'm not going to go to black screen, and it makes my face red when I do that. So, why can't we, figure these things out? Or why don't they make sense to us? And when you think about the volumes of books, and essays and everything written on these topics, the unknowable, the unknowables, plural. That, it's to use a simplistic phrase, it's mind-boggling. Would we be better off if we didn't know, like understand the concept of our mortality? Right? Or if we didn't contemplate life in general, the purpose, the so-called meaning of life, right? Which I'm sure in many people's minds comes to mind the Monty Python movie. Or the idea of, the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the meaning is 42. But, and then people talk about all sorts of things. It's the journey, and then people have tried to create, there's all kinds of new age ideas and spiritualism, and even in religion, the idea that it's this journey, this test, this, proving of yourself. Then there's Eastern religions and reincarnation and karma and, all that stuff. But, that's just not it. That's just not what I'm trying to get at. I was just watching that there was some spinning going on my analytics. I don't know. I don't see what in this conversation would be the problem with an algorithm. So, that's at the point. That's the point that I'm at in my life. Okay, so, when you hear me play this thing,
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
No, that's me. So you need a purpose in life. And, they found people who lived the longest. I don't want to get into, to be depressing here and stuff. So, try to move this in a direction. And I'm sorry it's slow moving. It's 5:03 a.m. here in the mid-Atlantic states. According to the weather, the rain is supposedly, it's raining now. Now it's saying it's going to rain at 6. Let's just hope maybe the rain passes. I don't know. It'd be nice, though. It's still an 80% chance of rain. Cloud's a little late getting here. Rain cloud burst. But, they found that people that lived long, centenarians, that one of the things they had is in life was that something to look forward to the next day. And I think that's important in many ways, not just for longevity purposes. They're trying to solve longevity now with chemistry. But it's like I don't fear, fear mortality. But, it is important to try to have some sort of purpose and meaning to your life that, gives you a reason to wake up and say, yeah, to get excited about, or at least feel good about, I mean, otherwise it's like, I don't want to get out of bed. But why do I get out of bed? Like today, it's like, I don't feel like getting out of bed. And it's not like I'm worried about doing this show, believe me. And it's not like I had to worry about feeding a cat or something. He's got cat water and dry food. If he's hungry, he could snack all night long. So I didn't have to get out of bed. I could have just laid there for a couple more hours. I might have even dozed back off, though there's no reason to sleep more than 8 hours. But I figured, well, I got to get up. Might as well get up. And I'm on this thing where I get up early. And like I say, if it doesn't rain, I'll go out in the backyard and I don't know. I really don't know if there's anything I could do about these rodents. I'm coming to that conclusion. I think what I need to do, I'm starting to consider that what I really need to do is just shore up my raised beds to keep the rodents out of the raised beds. And so that if the rodents go in, just maybe be spending more money on bird seed. It'd be really nice. It's crow season for the next... I call it crow season. I never heard anybody else say this, but the crows seem to come around this time of year, like for the month of May. And once it starts getting hot, and probably because they have black feathers, I think they just go into the hills where it's cooler. And I'm sure they have plenty to eat. In the hills, because there's all sorts of things growing, wild berries and things, whatever their main meal is. But I wish that during crow season they would like accost the rodents and chase them away. That would be nice. I've seen a robin chase away a chipmunk. Robins can, but I've seen the robin kind of back off from the rat. So, yeah. Unless some feral cats, magically appear in the alley. I don't know. My cat obviously isn't an outdoor cat, and my cat's on his last legs, I think. I hope not. I don't know. Like I say, that's the inspiration for this show, because that's the question, what's it all about? Why do these things happen? But why do we have brains? Why do we have minds, consciousness, whatever, awareness, of these unknowables? See, that's the question. They talk about you've heard the phrase happy mindless people, right? People walking around and not a care in the world, because they're really not thinking about anything other than like the superficial, right? Maybe that's why people really do Twitter and Facebook, right? And just watch these sporting events, right? They're subconsciously have found a way to avoid the pitfalls of the mind, right? I honestly believe that. Because, I've had, I live alone now with a cat. So I don't have it's not like, years I used to sit around and talk with people. And occasionally you'd find somebody, and I mainly in bars, in my travels where I'd have philosophical discussions. I find somebody who was into, a fellow thinker. And, you would have an interesting discussion. And even though there were no answers, like I say, I'm not seeking answers. It's the idea somehow in the process of just talking about these things, there was a certain satisfaction. It satisfied something. But I've also found, and I've even had friends years ago, not anymore, but that were extreme sports fans. And so their brains were filled with statistics and all kinds of, standings, names of players, history, of various, playoffs, championships, all that sort of thing. Caught up in that whole, the brains are just filled with that stuff. And so, if you tried to talk outside of that world, which I was never in that world. Like I said, I played sports when I was a kid, but I had no desire to memorize the statistics, of individuals I don't know, of some kind of game that's repetitive year after year. People win a championship and then they have to play all over again, right? And they pass the trophy back and forth. It's like, I'm always one of these people into completion. That's why I've had many different jobs. And people wondered why I would leave a job. And I basically, simply, my work here is done. I came here, there were problems. I solved the problems. I increased the profitability of the company, made it run smoother, efficiently. And then I was supposed to what? Just go to my office, kick up my feet on my desk, and take a few phone calls, have lunch, and have some meetings? It's like, no. I went there and solved the problems. And I hung around for a little while and go, this is boring. The complete opposite of what a bureaucrat is. A bureaucrat is someone who just sits there and basically, we used to call them, pencil pushers, paper pushers. Now I guess they're text and email pushers or whatever. And they have meetings and presentations, and HR tells them what they can say and can't do in the office. So their minds are just filled with this, superficial, meaningless nonsense, and they live their life, and they're perfect consumers. They buy products, right? Cars, furniture, clothing, all these sorts of things, right? Computers, cell phones. And those things have importance in their life. In fact, in many instances, they've come to have more importance in their life than, say, this picture of Sienna Miller here, in character in Alfie, than love, right? And romance and life and truth and beauty. The real pursuit of happiness, right? Not just the temporary, pleasures of, or, like a child, being occupied by something until they get bored with it. And then something new comes out, right? And it's how I look at the world. I know I see things different than other people, but it's like, why is there a new iPhone, a new computer, And someone would say, well, the technology improves. It's, Moore's Law, the chips. It's like, yeah, that's true. I'm not going to argue with that. But it's also because people get bored with the toy, right? The diversionary toy. Why do we go from plague to war to political campaigns and things that never, and no effect on us whatsoever? Unless you're caught up in the thing specifically, it could be, overwhelming and horror. But generally, for, 99.9% of the people on the planet, these things are nothing. They've no effect on your life whatsoever. It's no different than following a sports team. It's a preoccupation. It's a diversion. It's something to keep you from contemplating the unknowables. It's from keeping you from thinking deep thoughts. That you were born as a human being with the capacity to think deep thoughts. Unlike those other creatures that I mentioned before. And so, that's it. And so you think, like, well, what's it all about? And I'm sure that, and I don't want to I don't really, like I say, I don't want anybody, I'm not trying to depress anyone here. I don't want to be depressing in the sense of like, where someone says, well, what's it all about? It's not where, goodbye, cruel world. Okay. If you've taken this to that extreme, you need to seek psychiatric help immediately. And there are plenty of places and helplines and, places you can reach out to if you're at your, if this type of thing bothers you that much. I'm not talking about that. Okay. I know these questions do drive some people to that point. And there is help, for that. And that's what psychiatry is all about. Psychology is the study of this, these kinds of things in many ways. But no, I'm talking about, you can be level-headed, you can function in society, you can live, and you cannot be depressed. We all get depressed sometimes. There's nothing wrong with that. We all have loss in our lives, and that's just something that happens. And and we all have we all grieve, and and we have different stages of grief, and and different ways in which we work these things out, the negative things that enter our lives, how we deal with them and how we get over it and rise above it and move on and wake up and get out of bed the next day, or, the next week or the next month in some cases. But assuming that, it's like, I'm not asking these questions because I'm at my wit's end. Okay? I'm asking these questions because these are the big questions. And most specifically, that is the big question on the screen. What's it all about? And it would be easy for me to get into like some kind of weird scientific, discussion, a biological discussion, a science fiction fantasy discussion, right? But or a religious discussion. But the idea is that that's, like I say, it's the same with politics. It's like, I don't want to go there. That's not what I'm trying to talk about here. People seek out things to close their mind off to these kinds of thoughts. People don't want it. They don't want you to talk about the unknowable. In the most simplistic thing, and I've covered this before, it's like people don't want to talk about, if you excuse me, if you approach somebody and you start up a conversation and you try to talk about infinity, how come we don't understand, what happened before, the Big Bang or something? They look at you like you're crazy. I mean, unless there's some kind of astrophysicist or someone like that who wants to get into some kind of, discussion about it, which I would enjoy such a discussion. But generally speaking, people just have blocked this stuff out of their mind. They've blocked that question out of their mind. What's it all about? And society today lives in a world of illusion. We see the world through our senses. See, feel, hear, touch, taste, blah, blah, blah. In order for us to navigate through this life. And there's no, so we block out anything that's going to cause conflict or get in the way of that. It's like a tree in the road that you're traveling down. You either find another, turn around and find some side road to go around that obstacle, or you get out of your car or truck, which you happen to have a chainsaw in, and you go and you chainsaw the tree and move it to the side and drive forward, right? That's how people are. Some people might just sit there and curse and be angry and frustrated and take it out on the person that's sitting next to them in the car seat. All character defining responses. But that's life. That's the thing. We're constantly dealing with these obstacles, and people are finding ways in order to overcome those obstacles. And not everyone overcomes those obstacles in a way that's, nice, to put it, like my shirt, Be Nice, my latest shirt. I really like that one. That's the thing. Be nice, So, and I realize, as I talk here, that I need to add that to my screen. Don't worry, we'll get back to this. I'm looking for the ultimate font. Be nice. But the idea is that originally I used the font Warehouse, when I think about that, which is a font that is, I don't know if I have it on this computer. Doesn't seem to be a bit. Let's see. Very hard to. I don't know if I could call it up. Let's see. Maybe I can. It's kind of weird looking that way. I wish I could tighten it up. I was getting into a nice discussion and I kind of blew it for you, didn't I? Don't worry, we'll get back into it. Let's just go back with this. So, I was talking about the obstacles that we have. I'm pouring coffee, and I was drinking coffee, if you didn't notice that. Can never tell with the way the screen is. So how we navigate through this world defines, and how we deal with the obstacles and this question of what's it all about defines us, right? It's the definition, of who we are. A lot of people don't think of it that way. Well, someone like me is, this is an important question. For someone else, and I would venture to say for most people, it's an unimportant question. Things that are unknowable rarely, if ever, cross their mind. Most people don't consider their own mortality or the mortality of people around them until they're confronted with it directly. Meaning they're either very ill or someone around them is very ill and dying, or even, like I say, a pet. People don't understand the concept of loss in a relationship or love, until someone out of the blue breaks up with them. And then they're suddenly have this emptiness inside them. And then they then they wonder and question this. Some people think they're going to have their job forever or their apartment until the building they're in gets sold. And they have to move and suddenly, whatever. People are just whistling through life and suddenly the plague comes along in 2019, 2020 and their life changes and they're restricted and blah, blah, blah. But unless an existential, event or something happens directly to them, They just don't really think about anything other than just the diversionary things, the necessary things to navigate through life as they know it. And so because of that, and because we have done that so much and society has been based upon that, and because the media, and when I say media, I mean more than just social media, traditional media, but I mean advertising media, mediums. You know, the medium is the message. The medium is the massage, you know, Marshall McLuhan type of stuff. That, you know, we've just reinforced that concept within society, modern society. That's not to say all people think this way. You know, that's that whole problem with Western civilization in general, which I speak of often. And, you know, I was fortunate enough when I was younger to travel. And, you know, when you go to foreign countries, you know, and you have a discussion, particularly when you could, you know, I wasn't really, I mean, I know a few words, you know, in some foreign languages, you know, and at one point I was able to basically, I knew some basics to kind of, you know, get through, you know, as a tourist almost in that sense. But I was never a tourist. I never was a tourist, period, you know. But I could recall being on a plane one time, flying over the Pacific, and next to me was a woman who was on her way to Guam. And we struck up a conversation about life and things, and it's interesting. And I remember her, you know, and it was an enjoyable conversation. And like after she realized that I was I was enjoying the conversation as much as her, she said to me, she just looked at me and she said, you know, it's refreshing to talk to somebody, you know, an American who doesn't like think of everyone from Guam as like we all live in grass huts and wear grass skirts. Right? Yeah, I still remember that. And, you know, because people, you know, Americans have this kind of view of the world. You know, it's inherited from the, you know, like a British colonialist. They're the ones that dropped this on us, right? You know, the idea is Western civilization in general. But who knows what somebody in, you know, the middle of Africa, in some country in Africa, you know, how they view if you would say, what's it all about, if you could speak their language, right? You know, people don't, so it's not, you know, this could be mainly a Western civilization problem, you know, for the most part. Like I say, I have encountered many people from different countries, and I've found that, you know, while in their country and talking, you know, with them, that their viewpoints were much different, you know, than ours. You know, the first time I was in Australia, I had some people that were, you know, well, I guess they were friends, and we were out at a bar watching a band, and there was a group of us at the table, maybe about 5 people around a round table, you know, in this bar club, you know. Wasn't like a dancing club type of thing. And it was a band, a rock band of some kind playing, but it wasn't overly loud. It was just whatever. We're sitting there drinking beer, drinks, whatever. And there were one or two guys there because I knew I had come with this couple and another guy, a musician, a famous musician who I was trying. Well, I wasn't trying. He was going to be in the movie I was down there to produce. But there were two friends of theirs, this couples that were there. And I noticed that they were being very like cocky towards me. Right. And I finally and I'm going like, hey man, I get like, what's your problem? Right. And this was around the time, this is years ago. All right. And this was the time where they were going, well, you Yanks are all just, John Wayne cowboys, that kind of thing. They had this attitude that all Americans were like, that. I honestly believe that. And here I am, the diplomat, right? I'm just some guy trying to make a music film in Australia. And I'm going to defend the United States of America, right? Which I did. And I said, no, you're wrong. I said, most Americans aren't like that. I said, most Americans are just regular people just trying to live life just like most Australians. I said, we're as much victims of the people, in charge, right? As you are, And so a country is defined by the people who, make these policies and do these things. And elections don't really matter because people get elected and then they don't do what you asked them to do, right? Or what they promised they would do. Well, how does this all apply to what's it all about? Let's get back on track. Well, it's that different cultures, view this question in different ways. And there are probably many cultures that we don't know, perhaps cultures that we would refer to as primitive, right? Maybe some of these cultures down in the rainforest, the Amazon rainforest, these rumored tribes that every time that any sort of so-called modern man gets even close to where they live, they just move deeper and deeper into the jungle to avoid all contact whatsoever with us. And who knows what they think about these unknowables, or how their brain, their process, their thought process, their deep thinking is. People like to pretend that, particularly the Western civilization, colonial society, likes to see that we're the pinnacle of of civilization, of advancement. But we don't, that's like such a ridiculous, egotistical thing, right? Such arrogance from, narcissistic, sociopathic, whatever you want to call it, approach. And I don't know. I from my standpoint, I struggle with this question every day, almost every day, unless I'm preoccupied. and entertainment preoccupies you. Doing work in the garden, my battle with this rodent, right? You know, fills my mind with things, thoughts and and I'm processing data to come up with solutions, and so it pushes this question, what's it all about, behind, to the recesses of my mind or mind consciousness out here. And that's okay. You go mad if you just lived your life day in, day out, trying to answer or question or just being obsessed with these unknowables. But at the same time, I think it's important that, that periodically people do address these things. We have, in other words, our brains, the way we are composed, created, function, allows us to ask these questions that we have no answers for. So it's like, it just beckons another question. Why? Why do we have that ability to ask the question, what's it all about? And have we somehow, through Western civilization, over the past couple thousand years, have we somehow done some kind of, messing with our brains, our mind, through whether it's the education system or whatever we've done, passing things down, how our societies are structured, a number of things, that we've made this more complex or more, more troubling. Because it seems troubling to me, And I know there's people out there that say, well, you just have to put faith in something. You just have to believe in something, or you just have to, get, you think too much. You just need to do something. But the point is that doesn't help somebody who goes, well, I don't care about that. Get yourself, like somebody would say, you get yourself a hobby. It's like, I got hobbies. So, you think too much. That's another famous one people say. You think too much. Like that's an answer to anything. Right? So, I don't know. I think that it is good to contemplate these things every now and then. And to see it kind of puts life in perspective. And maybe it helps us to examine where we're going as an individual, maybe as a species too. But what's important to us, what our priorities are, maybe even to help us head off being devastated I guess. Possibly. By just every now and then questioning, what's it all about? And why do we have the ability to ask that question? Why does some people, why is that disturbing to some people? Like, it disturbs me, it's unacceptable that we don't know the answer to certain questions. It just doesn't seem like logical almost. A scientist would say, well, that's what science is. We're trying to solve those problems. Someone in some religious, spiritual area would say, well, you have to just accept these things and take this on faith, and someday you will know the unknowable. Put your faith in, a higher being. But that still doesn't that still is not an answer, because it still says the idea that someone answers that, gives you that answer, still poses, the question of why. It's really weird. It's just something, like I said, this is a bizarre thing. It's a flow of consciousness. It's just it's a mental exercise. I'm just looking at these things, I think some people, might be interested in this. Some people, others would say this was like the most boring video they've ever seen. The only redeeming quality of it was Sienna Miller, who's gorgeous, drop dead gorgeous. And that's okay. It's just, like I always say here, it's
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
It's just, just a show. That's all it is. It's a morning show, right? But I find it disappointing, frustrating, and sometimes depressing, and it's I don't know. I really don't know. And I see what's going on around me, and I see in many instances, and I don't mean around me personally, I mean around our culture. And I wonder if that's not what all this insanity that goes on is, and has somehow mushroomed into war and materialism, extreme materialism, right? And obsession with technology beyond, technology as a tool, the way it was for, thousands of years. And then these diversions and this newfound, in recent decades, this divisiveness and all these other things, and this propaganda and indoctrination and conditioning and stuff. And like I say, it all comes back to the quality of life. And I wonder that if our society would have focused, because I see this as an end of a civilization. I see Western civilization collapsed. I call this the former United States. It's not what it was. It's not going to be what it was. And I wonder if we might have focused on life, liberty, and happiness, pursuit of happiness, but I mean happiness in general. the quality of our lives over top of trying to find mechanical, digital, or other diversionary methods of, keeping us from understanding our true being, who we are, what we are, and answer these questions, the unknowables. Because that's the whole thing about a diversion. You could go back to a child. If you don't want a child to see a certain thing or to hear a certain thing, it's like, here, go outside. Mommy and daddy have to talk. Here, take your toy and go out in the backyard and play on the swing set or whatever. While we have a, an argument about divorce. But you see what I'm saying? In other words, a diversion is something that takes you away or puts someone out of that, conversation, out of what's really going on. And it's a simplistic example, just magnify it to what's going on a global or national way. Isn't that what politicians are saying to people? Isn't that what the entertainment industry is saying? Isn't that what the news media and these like pundits on these YouTube millionaire type of people, I call them? Isn't it all like, yeah, go out and play with your toys, or here, here's a little diversion. Don't, right? Isn't that what big tech's handing us? Big pharma. They're not curing us. The war machine, the war-profiteers. My God, how could you live with yourself, right? Big ag, messing with GMO type of stuff. Obsession with finance, the Federal Reserve, and what Wall Street does and the lives they destroy. And you got to wonder if you took away all that nonsense, and it is nonsense. It's all nonsense. The internet is all nonsense. All the social media, it's nonsense. You might say, well, what about you? Yeah, I don't care. I don't need this show. You take me off the show. I was much happier before this. I mean, I tell people all the time, the 90s were great years. I mean, I like computers and technology and all that stuff, but I wasn't, I was doing certain things. I was webcasting and stuff like that. But I mean, I wasn't, I was doing things like we were exploring remote regions of the earth, and it was educational or it was fun. It wasn't, it wasn't this madness that's going on now, that I find. So it's like, I don't know. It's weird. Pardon me for doing that. Face and nose gets itchy. But I don't have an answer, and we won't have that answer, because these things that have taken, have come to the fore and taken over are pretty much define the society we live in today, right? What I call the corporatocracy. And those of us who want, who ask the question, what's it all about, and why do we have the capacity to ask that question? We're oddballs. We get, one viewer or something, and that's it. That's the name. That's the name of the game, I guess, as it stands now. It just seems like, I feel that we're at the end. I feel we're at civilization's end, this particular civilization. I told you before, I believe that there have been previous civilizations. I believe in these cycles, these solar cycles, these grand cycles of some 10, 12,000 years, and these near extinction events. Many of us do. There's documentation and archaeological, anthropological, astrophysical, there's evidence to support these things. But it seems to me that this civilization is coming to an end. And all you have to do, on multiple levels, one from a scientific standpoint, there's things, if you really read the journals, if you really pay attention to what's going on in our solar system, with our sun, with our magnetic field and things like that. That's one way of saying, yeah, this thing's, this particular civilization is coming to a close. But then when you look at, you look at society itself, okay, outside of civilization, meaning, as a whole. But then you look at the culture, society, culture that we live in. I'm sorry for moving around. This chair has still not been resolved. We see it falling apart that way too. And maybe that's part and parcel for the, for the idea. That's what happens at civilization's end. Everything falls apart, including the social fabric of society, right? Which is going on, and we can witness that. Some people can't witness it. They're blinded by science, right? Like the Dolby thing, right?
Science.
But that's okay. They're diverted by, pop culture, the cult of personality, politics, these pundits on YouTube that are trying to persuade you, or who talk about the news. And don't go saying, well, what are you doing? I'm not talking about it that way. This is social criticism. This is questioning life. This is philosophy. All right? This is what this medium, part of what this medium, is good for and functions best as well as many other areas such as information, dissemination and that kind of thing. But the idea of meaningless, arguments back and forth over politics and the cult of personality and things of that nature, no. That's where this medium and other social mediums fail horribly. But it's not as if they've destroyed society. They're just kind of a symptom of a civilization that's coming to a close. Right? A culture that's, collapsing in and upon itself. We're imploding right now. So-called modernity, is reaching its end. And then it'll start all over again, maybe 100, 500, 1,000 years from now. Maybe that civilization will avoid the pitfalls that, we have. And maybe they won't be so diverted at such an early stage of their development that they'll be able to answer the question, what's it all about? Maybe the reason we have unknowables, the reason we ask why, the reason we ask what's it all about, and these things are, blow our minds for those of us who are, even bother to think about these things, people who have deep thoughts, is just because for thousands of years we've been sidetracked. Our brain, they talk about neural plasticity of the brain, right? Think about that. Our brains over thousands of years, if neural plasticity is a reality, that we've been rewired not to be able to figure out certain things. Our brains have developed in order to navigate in the world in which has been presented before us, a world that is this structured world, a hierarchical structure of some leaders, ruling elite, and people that, act as, glorified servants or cattle to these ruling elite. And over millennia, we no longer have those passageways in our brains, to be able to get there. And that it's like you have to use your, open your mind to consciousness and try to explore things there. But, we're brainwashed. It's just something to think about. That's all. Something to think about. It's possible. Maybe not true. Maybe that's not the way it is. But could be. I don't know.
Good morning.
Wow, that was loud in my ears. Hey, visit ROCKFLUX.com. You could get that Be Nice shirt, by the way. There's a link to it. ROCKFLUX.com is my site, and there's all kinds of wear there that can, if you're one of those people that thinks and wants to wake other people up, or just wear something that, alerts a person that you're a thinker, right? That you question some of this stuff, like everything is wrong and you don't know what you don't know, and then what? Or just be nice, like I say. That thing, it just dawned on me, there's so many people trying to push all this divisiveness and all this craziness and anger, and they just, they've got sourpusses on their face. What do they do when they confront somebody wearing a shirt that says be nice? GreatSolarStuff.com, like I always say, has more than solar stuff on it. There's some power backup, and, those things have become more and more necessary as the grid fails, which our grid is in such bad shape. And I, grab my books in print, Then What, Codex, my most recent books. I wrote 10 books. Get them in print on Amazon. Then What? It's only $8.90 or $9.95, I think. And of course, I've got over 50 beat poetry tracks out there. And they're available everywhere. You can listen to them on Spotify, blah, blah, blah. There's some songs out there that are just not that good. But I would say maybe there's 10 or 12 that are kind of semi-crappy because I didn't really produce them the way I wanted to. But there's a good 40 songs that I think are classics. Anyway, all the best. Have a great weekend. Hope yours is drier than mine. Take care.